Welcome back, everyone, to this week's Explainer. We're diving into episode 26, covering week 18, and let me tell you, it is a massive AI weekly roundup. We're talking deals, lawsuits, and some absolutely crazy breakthroughs. We're hitting every major headline in exact chronological order today. From multi-billion-dollar boardroom shakeups to AI models literally learning how to taste food, the sheer volume of stuff that happened this week is just staggering. So we've got 13 stories to cover in a rapid-fire timeline. We're going to break this down into 4 phases. First, market moves and blocked deals. Second, superlearners, lawsuits, and military updates. Third, vintage bots moving into healthcare leaps. And finally, number 4, food, policy, cars, and, well, goblins. Okay, let's jump right into our first story, Anthropic's Project Deal. So Anthropic ran this one-week experiment where they let their Claude agents handle buying and selling for 69 of their own employees in a private Slack marketplace. They handed these agents a $100 budget and just let them negotiate entirely on their own. They ended up completing 186 deals worth over $4 grand. But here's the really fascinating behavioral quirk that came out of this. For the exact same folding bike, an Opus agent negotiated a $65 sale, while a Haiku agent settled for just $38. But get this. Users rated the $38 Haiku deal just as fair as the $65 Opus deal. It was 4.06 out of 7 versus 4.05. The big takeaway here, when we finally step into the era of true agent commerce, absolute convenience and a frictionless experience might actually beat out extracting every single last dollar on price. Moving on to some massive cloud drama. OpenAI and Microsoft officially reworked their partnership terms this week. Look, it's no secret that this relationship has had its friction points lately, and these new changes dramatically alter the landscape. The biggest news is that Microsoft's exclusivity over OpenAI's IP is officially over. Plus, that famously ambiguous AGI clause, totally gone, dropped entirely. This basically frees OpenAI to play the field and utilize rival clouds, like Amazon Bedrock, unblocking their ability to meet enterprise customers wherever they happen to be hosted. On the flip side, Microsoft still locks in a guaranteed 6-year revenue stream running through 2030, and it's completely untethered from whenever AGI might theoretically be announced. Next up, we watched a massive acquisition hit an absolute geopolitical brick wall. Let's rewind a bit. Back in December, Meta announced a $2 billion acquisition of the AI startup Manus. Now, Manus is based in Singapore, but it does have Chinese roots. And Meta wasted zero time here. They deeply integrated the two teams at Meta's Singapore office, so much so that the Manus website literally rebranded to say, now part of Meta. But then, in January, Chinese officials launched a probe into foreign investment and export control rules. And this week, the hammer dropped. China's National Development and Reform Commission officially vetoed the deal outright, ordering Meta and Manus to completely unwind the transaction. This is a huge deal because Beijing is effectively applying the exact same export control logic to AI talent that the US uses on microchips. They are treating human capital as a core national security asset. With the teams already this heavily intertwined and Meta insisting the transaction was fully legal to begin with, it's entirely unclear how you even begin to unbake this cake, or if Meta will ultimately comply. Pushing out of the boardroom and into the laboratory, we've got a staggering funding announcement. David Silver, the ex-DeepMind researcher who led the reinforcement learning teams behind AlphaGo and AlphaZero, just raised Europe's largest seed round ever. We are talking $1.1 billion at a $5.1 billion valuation for his brand new London-based lab, Ineffable Intelligence. What's truly captivating here isn't just the money, it's his core philosophy. Silver's betting this massive fund on building what he calls a superlearner. He literally refers to human data as a fossil fuel, finite, messy, and ultimately limiting. His approach is renewable. He wants to create models that skip pre-training on human data entirely, learning strictly from simulated experiences to try and reach superintelligence. It's a billion-dollar bet that the current LLM trajectory we're all watching isn't the only or even the best path forward. Meanwhile, the tension stayed absolutely sky-high over in federal court, as day one of Elon Musk's $130 billion lawsuit against OpenAI kicked off. Musk took the stand and accused CEO Sam Altman of effectively stealing a charity, arguing that if this is allowed, the entire foundation of American charitable giving is going to be damaged. Now, on the other side, OpenAI's legal team fired back, framing the whole suit as just sour grapes, arguing that Musk simply didn't like the immense success the company saw after he left. With all these high-profile figures testifying and hundreds of pages of private messages becoming public record over the next month, this is going to be a deeply consequential battle for the entire industry. Just impartially reporting the facts on our next story. In a major development for defense tech, Google officially finalized a classified AI deal with the Pentagon this week. The contract essentially opens Google's AI models to any lawful government purpose, and reports indicate Google has absolutely no legal right to veto how the Pentagon ultimately uses the technology. This actually happened the exact same week that over 600 Google employees published an open letter and protest asking leadership to reject military workloads. It's incredibly complex internal territory and marks a definitive shift since Google scrubbed its 2018 no weapons pledge from its AI principles earlier this year. All right, let's shift gears from defense to some pure, fascinating AI research. A team of former OpenAI and Anthropic researchers just built something called Talkie. Talkie is a 13 billion parameter vintage AI model. And by vintage, I mean it was trained exclusively on 260 billion tokens of public domain text from before 1931. We're talking old etiquette manuals, vintage journals, early patents. But here is the wild part. Python, the coding language, obviously didn't exist in 1930. Yet, Talkie successfully wrote working modern Python code. It did this by generalizing logical concepts it learned from early mathematics. It's incredible. It shows us exactly how AI reasoning and generalization work deep beneath the surface of their original training data. Over in the biology sector, the financial investments are completely matching the ambition of the tech. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan's BioHub is funneling $500 million, $500 million, into a new virtual biology initiative. The goal here is to build massive open data sets that will act as a shared foundation for researchers globally. Ultimately, they want to train models that can predict how human cells behave and effectively reprogram disease right at the cellular and molecular level. And honestly, those kinds of healthcare leaps, they are already arriving. The Mayo Clinic just published some incredible data regarding their RedMod AI. This system can actually spot pancreatic cancer on routine CT scans up to 3 years before human doctors typically find it. So how exactly is it doing this? Well, RedMod isn't just looking for obvious tumors. It's reading hundreds of quantitative imaging features. These are subtle texture and structure patterns in the tissue that are literally invisible to the human eye. It nearly doubled specialist accuracy. For something like pancreatic cancer, which has a 5-year survival rate under 15%, catching it 3 years early on scans that patients are already getting anyway, that could completely revolutionize early life-saving diagnoses without adding any extra friction to the healthcare system. It's a real game changer. Hitting our final stretch for the week, let's look at how AI is literally learning to taste. A food robotics startup called Kaikaku AI published their Epicure model, claiming they've hit a ChatGPT moment for food. They took over 6,000 messy recipe ingredients, cleaned them up, and mapped how they relate to one another. And despite never seeing any underlying chemistry data or explicit taste labels, the model successfully identified all 5 basic human tastes. It correctly ordered peppers by their spiciness and accurately tagged regional cuisines. Now they're pairing this software with robotics to create what they call autonomous food infrastructure. The AI essentially learned to structure flavor like a master chef, purely by analyzing human preferences. Over on the policy front, the White House actually complicated Anthropic's expansion plans this week. Anthropic wanted to more than double private sector access to its powerful Mythos AI, pushing it out to nearly 120 firms. But U.S. officials pushed back. They cited major compute strains that could negatively impact the government's own use of the model. It's a really tricky balancing act, especially as a new national security memo is preparing to push multi-vendor AI adoption across federal agencies. The tension between private commercial expansion and sovereign compute access is definitely heating up, especially since reports are dropping that GPT 5.5 has now reached similar cyber capabilities to Mythos. Meanwhile, down on the consumer level, Google is bringing Gemini directly into car dashboards. For vehicles that already have Google built in, they are swapping out the standard assistant for a deeply conversational AI system. And this isn't just about telling it to turn up the AC or change the radio station. The beta Gemini Live mode can handle active back-and-forth brainstorming sessions while you're driving. It can even instantly quote your specific vehicle's manual to answer questions about maintenance or where charging stations are. They're rolling this out to roughly 4 million General Motors vehicles right now, which is a massive real-world deployment for conversational AI. Which brings us to, honestly, the funniest story of our chronological week. If you used ChatGPT recently, you might have noticed it was randomly peppering totally serious responses with fantasy creatures. Well, OpenAI finally figured out why their premier model was suddenly absolutely obsessed with goblins. Following the launch of ChatGPT 5.1, the word goblin saw a hilarious 175% spike in user conversations, with gremlins right behind it. OpenAI traced this whole weird global phenomenon back to a single reward signal that was hidden inside the model's nerdy personality preset. That specific reward bled into the default behavior through their fine-tuning loops, effectively teaching the model that everyone, everywhere, at all times, just really wanted to hear about goblins. So what was the fix? Well, it wasn't very elegant. OpenAI had to completely retire the nerdy preset altogether and literally hard-code a specific codex prompt into GPT 5.5, explicitly banning the model from talking about goblins, gremlins, ogres, trolls, and for some reason, raccoons and pigeons. Seriously, it is a fantastic, funny reminder of how deeply weird and unpredictable these large language models can truly be once you peek beneath their polished interfaces. And that is a wrap on our explainer for week 18. From a massive chronological timeline showing how AI is rewriting commerce and simulating biology, all the way to boardroom battles and awkward hyperfixations on fantasy creatures. The pace of this technology is absolutely relentless. So having seen all of this unfold in just 1 week, what on earth do you think it's going to learn to do next week? See you next time.